massive achievement, honestly, because you're dealing with the personalities in the room, which is sometimes a thing in and of itself, but also the immense emotional toll that witnessing the things that we're witnessing can take on us on a personal level. So the tenacity and the stamina that it takes to keep going is really admirable. So congratulations to everybody who's here, and you know, I'm speaking for myself. I don't want to be doing this kind of work. I'd rather go to brunch and plan family vacations and maybe spend more time painting and things like that, but there's something wrong with us, apparently. There's something in us that does not allow us to do that when we see the kinds of things that we're witnessing in the world. If we know that there's a genocide going on, or if we, you know, all of the injustice, it's just unbearable, and it's a personality type or a personality flaw or whatever you want to call it, but that's just who we are, and so we don't really have a choice, and that's certainly the case for me. I'm not a scholar or a historian or or somebody who knows how to use a mic stand. Yeah, I think we're good. I just have my personal story, and that's all I can share. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you all tonight as well. So I'm a member of the Albany chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace, and thank you again to Trudy for that introduction. That was really wonderful. I moved to the Albany area in 2013, and the Albany chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace formed that following year in 2014. So we're doing 10 years already in the region. Jewish Voice for Peace, you might recognize this shirt. It's become a little bit famous over the past 6 months. And this is the sort of, this is our statement. We envision a world where all people, from the US to Palestine, live in freedom, justice, equality, and dignity. Like generations of Jewish leftists before us, we fight for the liberation of all people. We believe that through organizing, we can and will dismantle the institutions and structures that sustain injustice and grow something new, joyful, beautiful, and life-sustaining in their place. And so these are just some of the photos from probably October, November, when there were mass actions by Jewish Voice for Peace. We have one in the Capitol, Statue of Liberty, and various bridges in New York City that were shut down. And I just remember when the action at the Capitol was one of the first ones, and seeing that when it happened was so overwhelming to me. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And now, only 6 months later, this is commonplace. Disrupting a politician when they're speaking at some fundraiser or gala or whatever, and screaming at them and demanding that they end the genocide and support a ceasefire, that is the norm now. And so just witnessing that quick transformation over the past 6 months is really, really powerful. So as much as I find myself in moments of despair, we really need to acknowledge how much we've moved, even just from October of this past year. So this is me. And as Trudy said, my father was born in 1956 in the newborn state of Israel. His parents came from Poland and Romania, and he was considered first-generation Israeli. He served in the Israeli occupation forces, and then after that he came to the US to study civil engineering in New York City, and that's where he met my mother, who was Irish-Italian Catholic. What the hell is Israel? What is Palestine? I don't really know anything about that. And when I was 4 years old, my grandfather in Israel, he owned a business. It was an excavation company, so tunnels, bridges, things like that. He was getting older, and he said to my dad, would you come and work with me for a little while? And so my dad said, let's try it for 5 years. And so my mother, who grew up on Long Island, ended up in Israel with her 2 young children, myself and my sister Ava. I went to Israeli public schools. Here I am probably in the 2nd grade. We studied the Torah in public school. Red flag, number 1. So I think this is me receiving the Torah so that I could study it in a school setting when I was 8 years old. And my biggest thing that I did as a child was horseback riding. I was like a total horseback riding freak. And it was a kind of a cool time to be doing that because the space that we're talking about, as we all know, is such a small, small space. So if you want to get into something, guess what? You're competing on a national level right away. So I spent a lot of weekends traveling and riding horses and competing, and that's me over there. Now, as this was going on, as time wore on, my mom, the Irish, Italian Catholic girl from Long Island, she started noticing that something was amiss. And I don't know exactly what the moment was for her, but she started demonstrating with Women in Black, and this is them, in a couple of towns over from us. And so on Saturdays, she would drop us off. Well, she would ask us to join her, but I was mortified, would not do it. Because it really was, this was pretty extreme. This is not like, if you can imagine the blowback from the Miko Pellet event in Bethlehem, New York, just kind of, times that by a lot, and then that would be the sort of feelings that you would get for holding a sign that says, end the occupation in Israel in circa 2000. But nevertheless, that's what she started to do. And she went to some demonstrations. At one point, she was shot with a tear gas canister in her leg, and she came home with a massive bruise on her leg. And things were heating up and heating up and heating up. And this is now in the early 2000s, and the wall, the apartheid wall, was beginning to be built. And then in 2003, Rachel Corrie was murdered. She was in Rafah, which we have heard so much about the past few months, and she was attempting to defend a home from being demolished. She was standing on top of a mound of dirt, wearing a bright orange vest, and using a megaphone. And what she was doing, I think, was operating under the sort of American understanding of civil disobedience, under that concept of, if I put my body in front of a bulldozer, they will have to stop. And she was very wrong. And it didn't matter that she was an American, it didn't matter that she was a white woman. She was run over by that bulldozer once, and then it reversed, and it ran over her again, and it killed her. And while I was spending my time riding horses, so I was at this riding place, and we had this one instructor who'd been there for a longer time, an older guy. He left. A new riding instructor comes in. He's 28 years old. He's gorgeous. I'm in love. I'm 14. I am like, I'm in love with this person. And it turned out that he was one of the people involved in the death of Rachel Corrie. And I overheard him on the phone talking about the media attention that it was getting, and what his official battalion's position was, and everything like that. And so that was a moment that really, they say politics is personal. It's so personal. It's just people, right? It's all made up of people. And so this was the moment that really hit home for me. And so in 2004, I turned 16, and my mom was like, "This is it. We got to get the fuck out of here." And because at the age of 18, I would be drafted to the Israeli military. And when you turn 16, there's a lot of preliminary activities and things that start. So it was really the time to go, and that's what we did. And being away from it really allowed me to, I did 2 years of high school in the US, and then I went to college, and stepping back from that really gave me the opportunity and the freedom to research and learn and study where I came from and what I had just witnessed in a different way, because there was so much anxiety growing up. I cannot stress enough how much anxiety I had to talk about politics, to talk about occupation growing up in Israeli society. It was so taboo, it was so explosive, and it would have ruined all of my relationships which it turns out it has. So, but that's okay. So I went to college, I studied at SUNY Geneseo, and I applied for this program to go on it was called, at the time the organization was called Interfaith Peace Builders, and they're based out of Washington, D.C. They're now called Eyewitness Palestine. And this was the first time that I went back, and I was kind of a tourist in a lot of ways. And I went with a group, a wonderful group of people, and some of whom I'm still in contact today, Palestinians and different people from across the United States. And we traveled throughout the West Bank. We were in 48 Palestine or Israel, and it was my first time going to the other side of the wall. And so you can see in this picture just how enormous and ugly and imposing and horrific it is. Paid for by your tax dollars. Yep, and this was a picture I took at the time. And I'm sure that most of this graffiti at this point is painted over millions of times, because there's always new and different writings and pictures that get put on this wall. But a country is not only what it does, it is also what it tolerates. And I looked up Kurt Tucholsky just the other day, and he was a German journalist during World War II, and was one of the first who was critical of the Nazi regime, and was one of the first citizens to have his citizenship revoked by the Nazi state. So, coming back from that trip, that really kind of kicked me into higher gear with my activism, sort of on my own this time, and I joined Palestinian Rights Committee I've been a member of for a long time, and the newly formed Jewish Voice for Peace chapter in Albany. So here's a picture of some of us. We had found out in 2019 that Mayor Sheehan was in Israel. She didn't announce she was going. She just posted something on her Facebook all of a sudden, like, ooh, I'm here. And it was all about meeting with leaders to talk about like different innovative ways that like Palestinians could work from home from the West Bank, aka provide labor to Israeli companies without having to go through checkpoints, which is dystopian and just bizarre and like it's a very weird thing to be excited about. And then this picture where I'm holding the sign is when Governor Cuomo signed his ridiculous executive order that essentially created a blacklist for companies who support the boycott of Israel. So right now, to this day, on the OGS website, there is a list of companies that are supportive of boycott, and there's like really nobody on there because whatever, it's mostly just a scare tactic, but the fact that that was a thing was crazy, and we had a large rally at the Capitol, and I still love this sign. When Palestinians use violence, we condemn them. When they use nonviolence, we blacklist them. How should they resist the occupation? And that's been the question for Palestinians since 1948, right? How are they supposed to resist their occupation? There is no answer to that question, because the answer, according to Zionists, is they don't. They go away, they die, or they leave. And you know, I went to a screening at the Sanctuary for Independent Media a couple of nights ago, and it made a really interesting, it was called, the film was called Spaces of Exception, and it made really interesting connections between the indigenous people of this land and the Palestinian experience. And I think for US citizens, we're so okay with saying, yeah, that was really bad what happened to the Native Americans. So sad, you know? And never having to grapple or do anything about it. And I think that the Zionist dream is for the exact same thing to happen someday. To just say, it was really sad, but you know, it's like 100 years ago now, so like, what are we gonna do about it? And the thing is that Palestinians are resisting right now. And if the Native Americans had iPhones and were sharing images and videos of the carnage that they experienced by white settlers, you know, we would have to do something about it, right? It's very easy to look on the past and say, well, it was a long time ago. Like, what are we gonna do? And the older I get, you know, 75 years really doesn't seem like that long anymore. It really doesn't seem like that long ago. And so to imagine that there are lots of living, breathing people who today still remember their homes and their gardens and their childhood and their experiences in their schools and their communities, that they remember very well, and they have those dreams and those feelings. It's really striking. So here's where the presentation gets even more depressing. So this is my grandfather. This is Yosef Inventage. He went by Yoske most of his life, and he changed his last name to Carmelli when he arrived in Palestine in the early 40s, or the mid 40s. Now, why did he choose this wonderful Italian-sounding last name? Because he settled in Haifa, which is on Mount Carmel. So Carmelli was the name that he chose. So, had he not emigrated to Palestine, my last name would be Keren Inventage, which, not great. Anyway, so my grandfather was a real larger-than-life kind of a character, and he had a very dramatic and compelling story of survival from the Holocaust, and so he was always speaking about his experience, and he shared it with lots of school-age students because he would like to go to like 4th grade classes, because that's approximately how old he was when he was orphaned by the Holocaust. And so he was a big talker, he was a big sharer, and the year that he died in 1997, and early that year, he was approached by the USC Shoah Foundation to give testimony about his experience. So luckily for my family, we have a 3-hour testimony that's recorded. And I just watched it the other day, and the parallels between what he lived through and the Palestinian experience in Gaza right now are palpable. So that's really what I wanted to spend the rest of my time talking about, if you permit me. So, so hopefully, can you read the, you can see it well enough? Okay, let me see. Oh, we got to get that Bluetooth thing going again, though.
You got to hit the triangle.
I guess not that it matters, because he's speaking in Hebrew. Sorry. Anybody here can understand it, not for you. What happened to my screen now? Oh, there we go.
נגמר הסיפור של דיבורים חופשיים בצד הארץ. היהודים באזור ורשה, כולם נאלצו לחיות בגטו.
באותה תקופה, באוקטובר שנת 40, המשפחה עדיין הייתה שלמה.
זה כרגע רציתי לחזור על זה. לפני שאני פה דיברת על אוקטובר, אני פסחתי על מקרה דומיננטי שקרה בפברואר 1940. בפברואר, כמו שציינתי קודם, אבי היה איש מקובל בעיירה, ולא רק בעיירה אלא באזור, בסביבה. היה ידוע כסוחר עמיד ומקובל מאוד, בעיקר בצד בין הפולנים. ובשנת, בפברואר 40, נרצח ברגרמייסטר, זה ראש עיירה, גרמני פולקסויצ'ר. והגרמנים, כתגובה כנקמה, עצרו קרוב ל-200 אזרחים פולנים, בין אלה כמה יהודים בודדים. זה קרה ב-24 לפברואר 1940, באו, אני חושב שזה היה מוצאי שבת, אני לא... התפרצו כמה חיות, קלאקסים גרמנים, אלינו הביתה באמצע הלילה, ותפסו את אבי. אבי ניגש אל מיטתי ונפרד ממנו. נשק אותי. ידע פרדו. והוא נעלם. אני הייתי כבר בן 10. אמי הפכה עולמות בשביל להתחקות על יצאתה, אבל הגרמנים העלימו את כל האנשים. בדיעבד, שנים רבות אחרי כן, רק ב-84, באחד מביקוריי בפולין, נודע לי כי הם נלקחו אל בית הסוהר בברקה בשלפדיה, שם שהו יומיים בכלא, והוצאו בלילה ב-26 לפברואר 1940, וכל 200 האנשים נרצחו, נורו ביער פלמירי, קרוב לברקה. אדם כפי שציינתי.
So, we heard that story, and then we've seen images. This was an article that made it to CNN. You know, how many did not make it to CNN? Of images from Gaza show Israeli soldiers detaining dozens of men stripped to underwear. And so, my great-grandfather, along with 200 others, was buried in a mass grave in the Palmyra forest outside Warsaw. And we've seen the images of mass graves of Palestinian men that have been summarily executed in Gaza as well.
ניסו לעזור קצת לאנשים מאוד מאוד עליים. ניסו קצת לעזור. אני זוכר שהיה אפילו מטבח שחילקו קצת מרק לאנשים, ילדים היו הולכים שם לקבוצות משיבורים, והיו מקבלים קצת מרק. אני זוכר היו הצגות. אחותי השתתפה באחד ההצגות בתור רקדנית קטנה, אני זוכר את זה. היא שיחקה פרפר. היא ראתה איזה ריקוד של פרפר.
UN officials say Israel is systematically impeding Gaza aid distribution. Children are, carrying plastic containers, pots, pans, whatever they have to these distributions, and we've seen those images as well. And also videos, I'm going to show one of these, of the ways that people in Gaza are finding, ways to entertain children. And we have to remember that the population of Gaza is roughly half children, and they need things to do. Trudy was talking about my kids in the background, like, oh my gosh. And of course, there's going to be a Sandy Hook Promise ad, another issue.
Hi everyone, Mark Barden here at Sandy Hook Promise. On December 14, 2000.
That video is a number of months old, so it's terrifying to imagine how many of those children are no longer with us. So so after my great-grandfather was killed, my grandfather, his mother, and his younger sister, who was a couple years younger than him, were taken to a ghetto that was not enclosed. Like, it wasn't surrounded entirely. It was sort of an open ghetto. And yeah, so he's talking about, experiences from that particular location that he was in for a number of years.
יום כיפור, 41. אני לא צם, כן? עם הצבא, לעדות הצבא. ואני קיבלתי קורסה שידורים של בשר וחזיר מבצבת יובל. ובהפסקת הצום, לא היה נורמלי, איבדתי את הנרות, אישה שיחה באלוהים, אכלנו סם חזיר. את יודעת מה זה? את יודעת מה זה?
We know that the vast majority of Palestinians in Gaza were, going through the month of Ramadan, where they were fasting already in conditions of famine, and the U.S. and its completely dehumanizing, ridiculous aid drops, so-called, of food that have landed on people, killed people, ruined infrastructure, vital infrastructure like solar panels on tops of hospitals. People have drowned trying to get this aid that has landed in the sea. Absolute joke. And then some of the people who actually got the aid opened it up to find expired U.S. military rations, some of which contained pork. Oh, sorry, I should give a little context here, but because my great-grandfather was, he had a hardware store, and so he had a lot of connections with not just the Jewish community. My family came from a very integrated kind of community. It wasn't a very insular Jewish community. So because of those connections, and his mother also worked in the store, so she had those connections as well. And so when they were forced to move into the ghetto, they would call, they'd be able to reach out to people that they knew from better times to call on them for favors. So at one point, my great-grandmother placed my grandfather's sister, Friedel, in a convent. And she found a place for him to stay, hidden in a Polish family's residence. So the children were split up. Mom had run away from the ghetto and was sort of in and out. She was in the woods and kind of in the periphery of things. And so that's the context for this next piece.
איזה קשר או משהו שאני נמצא אצל משפחת דורסקי בגישנרו. וזה מרחק של איזה קילומטרים ספורים. ואחותי אופיר. כשאחותי אופיר, וזה היה דצמבר 42. למה אני זוכר דצמבר 42 ואני זוכר את התאריך? כי זה היה ערב הקריסמס של הפולנים, של הנוצרים, של הקתולים. אוקיי.
This is back when it was tape.
שאין בחוץ. וכמו שאחותי הגיעה, אומרת האישה הפולניה, הפרתם את האימון שלי, איך העזתם למסור לילדה שאתה פה מסתתר. הייתה בעיה שתעשו אנשים, ילדים או מבוגרים, הרביצו להם, אינו אותם, שרצו לדעת, הגידו איפה הסתתרתם או איפה יש עוד יהודים. זו הייתה בעיה מסוימת מבחינתה. אבל הילדה הזאת, כנראה שהמזרון מאיזושהי סיבה גירשו אותה. וכשאנחנו כמדבר, התחבקנו, התנשקנו, אני אז ילד בן קרוב ב-13, וילדה בת 11. אומרת הפולניה, החוצה, החוצה. ומגרשת את שנינו. וביקשנו להישאר עוד קצת עד שיכשירה. עמדנו שני ילדים קטנים, שני ילדים יהודים, מחובקים ובכינו. נורא בכינו. התחננו, אנא, רק בערב אנחנו בצום, כי פחדנו שנצא ויתפסו אותנו וירצחו אותנו.
So just in case, you know, when the people who accuse JVP of not being Jewish, because we've heard that. We heard that at the Albany Common Council and various other places that were funded by Iran, and none of us are Jewish and things like that. This is me in my most awkward years, about 9 or 10 years old, sitting with my family, talking about the experience. And I remember very well being in my grandparents' apartment when this was filmed, because my mom told me this was Steven Spielberg's project. So I thought Steven Spielberg was coming to interview my grandfather. He did not. Also, Steven Spielberg is a terrible Zionist, unfortunately. So, you know, there has been this perception or this idea out there that it's wrong to make comparisons to the Holocaust, and I categorically deny that. I categorically reject that claim. How can I, when watching my grandfather's testimony, not immediately think of the families in Gaza that are torn apart, that are devastated in the same way? But, you know, it's this concept of parallax view, and, you know, since we made it through the Trump years, I think we know something about looking at something, all of us together looking at one thing, and some groups seeing the exact opposite of what the other group is seeing. In that same scenario, in that same truth, we're seeing different things. And so unfortunately, for the rest of my family, meaning like my father's side of the family, the conclusion that they came to from this story is that Israel is the only place where this will never happen again, and that you know, Zionism and the state of Israel needs to be defended in order for us to be safe. And that's very sad to me. So, you know, they would say maybe never again for the Jewish people, and I take it as never again for anyone. And in particular, never again for the people that suffered because of my family's suffering. This middle picture here is a sign that my sister made, and we went down to DC for the 2 large rallies in DC in November and January. And it says, "This granddaughter of Holocaust survivors says stop funding Israeli war crimes." And some of these other pictures are from the Albany Common Council's ceasefire resolution that we passed on January 4th. We were the first municipality in New York State to do that, which is pretty cool. And I was so proud to have been able to be a small part of that. And I just wanted to show you a little clip when we got the news. And then you have to suffer through an ad for peanuts or whatever this is.
Side effects of type 2? Losing a what? Anyone who's been on it for
Further discussion? Can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes.
Anani.
Yes.
Valorant.
Yes.
Sparrow.
Yes.
Flynn.
No.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey. Johnson.
Yes.
Keegan.
Yes.
Kimbrough.
Yes.
Love.
Here.
Robinson.
Yes.
Romero.
Yes.
Zamer.
No.
10 in the affirmative.
Resolution passed. Thank you. We do have further business. Moving on.
Yeah, so that was a bright moment after, you know, months of just feeling so helpless. I think the ceasefire resolution was something concrete that we could do, something that we could work towards. And so I was really grateful to be part of a small group that came together, that had Palestinians and Arabs, Muslims, Jews from Jewish Voice for Peace, Christians, and we worked our asses off to get some kind of resolution passed. And the Common Council was ridiculous, and they changed the language so many times, and they tried not to vote on it, and they kept postponing it. But what we did is we showed up. We showed up, and so many people showed up. We crowded that room. There was nowhere to sit. People were sitting on the floor. People were out in the hallway. People were outside of the building. They were, at one point, in one of the earlier meetings, I was giving testimony or something speaking to the council, and you could hear people chanting outside of the building. That was beautiful. That was so beautiful. And like I said earlier, it is so hard, and I hit this wall myself about a month ago where I just shut down. I shut down. I was like, I am on, I don't know if everybody here is on the various texting apps, but there's Signal, there's WhatsApp, there's Slack, there's all these different things on my phone, and all day long, this group is organizing this thing, and you're getting an email, and you're getting this, and you're just trying to post on Instagram, and you're trying to get it on Facebook too, and make sure that people come to this rally, and come to this thing, and also can you create a flyer, and it was just, it's been non-stop since October, and so I took a little time to breathe, because it does become so overwhelming, and it can feel like, how can this be happening? And I came to a realization myself at one point that was a real recognition of the privilege that I had, particularly as a white citizen of the US, thinking that, if I protest, and I call my representatives, and I sign the petitions, and I do all these things that I'm told I'm supposed to do, then change has to happen, right? Right? Because that's what happens. You go out and you march and you make noise, and eventually things happen. And to not see that after 6 months is hard. It's really, really hard. But I have been inspired this entire time by Palestinian activists, Palestinian scholars, some of the most brilliant people. I attended a Zoom at Albany Law the other day with Diana Buto, zoomed in, Nora Erekat, completely inspiring. And there's also a young international rights lawyer named Lara Elborno, and she was actually part of my delegation that I went on in 2010, and she has a podcast called the Palestine Pod, and she has a huge following online. She's called Gazan Girl, even though she's never been to Gaza, but her family was originally from Gaza. And these women are so inspirational, and one of the things that I picked up recently was, there was a conversation about utilizing international law and how we've seen time and time again the US veto ceasefire resolutions at the UN Security Council. They just vetoed Palestinian statehood, the only one to oppose the US. And to feel like, oh my God, we thought international law was the thing. Like, we're using the tools, we're doing the things. Why isn't this working? And it's the only answer that I have is it's a combination of everything. It's the protests, and it's the tools, and it's international law, and it's contacting the representatives, and it's BDS campaigns, and it's fighting the library, right? And it's like all of these little things together is going to change public opinion, and it already has changed public opinion significantly in 6 months. I hate, and I can't believe that it is taking tens of thousands of dead Palestinians in Gaza, and tens of thousands of orphaned children, and dismembered children, and a just completely devastated society. I mean, infrastructure. I can't understand that is what it's taking, but we are moving, finally, I think, I hope. And I have to hope, because that's my son. That's my son, Ethan. He just turned 1, and his name in Hebrew means is Eitan, which means mighty and everlasting. And that's a picture of him at one of the protests in DC back in January. I've been carting him around to so many protests. They just know me as like the lady who brings the baby at this point. And next to him is a Palestinian girl that I saw at the protests in DC, and her father was holding her up, and it was just all the hope that I could find, and all the hope that I need, and hopefully the hope that hopefully a picture that gives you hope too. So thank you.